For decades, archaeologists believed humans arrived in the Americas only after an ice-free corridor opened roughly 13,000 years ago, an idea known as the Clovis-first model. Yet, at Santa Elina rock shelter in Mato Grosso, Brazil, a French-Brazilian team uncovered giant ground sloth osteoderms and a modified tooth in stratified layers. Those layers were securely dated using a Bayesian model that combined radiocarbon dating, uranium-thorium dating, and optically stimulated luminescence, to range from 25,100 to 27,400 years ago, as reported in Proceedings of the Royal Society B on July 12, 2023. Advanced analyses, including optical microscopy, scanning electron microscopy, photoluminescence at 430 nanometers, and synchrotron microtomography, demonstrated human modification beyond natural taphonomy. These findings directly challenge the Clovis consensus, and they rival or predate other sites. White Sands footprints, 21 to 23,000 years ago. Toca de Tirapeya, more than 20,000 years ago. Monteverde, 14,800 years before present. Chiquihuite Cave, 25 to 30,000 years ago, though that site remains contested. They also echo 2021 genetic models for coastal entry, which propose human presence from 26 to 25,000 years ago. But if humans truly reached central Brazil during the last glacial maximum, what does this mean for long-held migration theories? This is a comprehensive re-examination of controversies, corroboration, and what the field must confront next. For most of the 20th century, the Clovis-first model set the standard for the peopling of the Americas. According to this framework, humans crossed from Siberia into Alaska during the last ice age and spread south only after a corridor opened between the Laurentide and Cordilleran ice sheets, around 13,000 years before present. This corridor, running east of the Rocky Mountains, was long considered the only viable inland route. Archaeological consensus held that the earliest Americans left distinctive stone points, Clovis points, across the continent, and that no credible evidence existed for earlier human presence. That consensus began to fracture in the last decade. In New Mexico, White Sands National Park yielded a set of human footprints pressed into ancient lake bed sediments. Radiocarbon dating of rapia seeds embedded within the prints, combined with optically stimulated luminescence and pollen analysis, placed the tracks between 21,000 and 23,000 years ago. These results, published in Science in 2021 and reaffirmed in 2023, directly contradicted the idea that humans could not have entered North America before the corridor opened. The White Sands findings forced archaeologists to revisit the timeline. If people walked the ancient playa 21,000 years ago, they must have arrived by some other route, likely along the Pacific coast or through an as-yet undocumented interior path. The implications were immediate. The Clovis-first model could no longer explain all the evidence. Sites like Monteverde in Chile, dated to 14,800 years ago, had already hinted at a deeper past. But the White Sands footprints provided unambiguous proof of human activity well before the ice-free corridor existed. With the timeline pushed back by nearly 10,000 years, the search intensified for other early sites, especially those demonstrating human presence far from the coasts. The urgency to find and scrutinize inland sites with secure dates and clear evidence of human activity grew, setting the stage for a new wave of discoveries and debates across the Americas. Santa Elina rock shelter stands at 15 degrees 27 minutes 28 seconds south, 56 degrees 46 minutes 93 seconds west, within the limestone hills of Mato Grosso, Brazil. Excavations began in 1985 under the direction of Agueda and Denise Vaialou, and have continued for nearly 4 decades, making it one of the longest-running archaeological projects in South America. The site setting is a shallow, north-facing rock shelter carved into a limestone escarpment with stratified deposits reaching depths of over 4 meters. Excavation areas cover up to 80 square meters, exposing a sequence of 4 main sedimentary units labeled 1 through 4. The most significant finds come from Unit 3, a meter-thick band of poorly sorted sand and gravel, further divided into sublayers 3, 1 through 3, 4, based on differences in color, compaction, and artifact content. Within Unit 3, the deepest sublayer, 3-4, contains a dense cluster of faunal remains, including thousands of osteoderms from a single Glossotherium phoenicis individual, as well as stone flakes, retouched tools, and a modified tooth. The archaeological materials are concentrated in a narrow transect, with clear separation from younger deposits by sterile sands. Stratigraphic profiles show well-preserved layering, minimal post-depositional disturbance, and no evidence of mixing from bioturbation or water flow. The shelter also preserves evidence of later occupations, including hearths, storage pits, and painted rock art panels along the rear walls, spanning from the late Pleistocene through the Holocene. The combination of continuous excavation, detailed stratigraphic documentation, and the presence of multiple cultural layers distinguishes Santa Elina from many other early American sites. By anchoring the debate in a precisely mapped, deeply stratified inland context, the site provides a rigorous field setting for testing claims of human activity well before the Clovis horizon. Glossopterium phoenicis, the giant ground sloth, dominated the faunal record in Santa Elina's deepest occupation layer. In Unit TWE 4, excavators recovered thousands of small, bony plates, osteoderms, that once formed a protective armor beneath the animal's thick hide. This single sloth individual is represented by nearly 3,000 osteoderms, densely clustered within a narrow transect of the shelter's floor. Each osteoderm, typically 1 to 2 centimeters across, is a compact, disc-shaped ossicle with a hard, mineralized surface. The sheer abundance of these bones, all deriving from one animal, defines the faunal context of the layer and provides an unusually rich source of potential raw material. The osteoderm's distribution is not random. Most are concentrated in a band less than half a meter thick, tightly associated with other skeletal elements, limb bones, vertebrae, and teeth, within a clearly stratified sandy matrix. Sediment analysis shows no evidence of water transport or mixing from later periods, preserving the original spatial relationship between the bones and any artifacts present. Taphonomic study indicates minimal disturbance after burial. The osteoderms are neither scattered by scavengers nor reworked by soil movement. Their clustering, along with the presence of associated stone flakes and a modified tooth, points to a single episode of deposition, likely resulting from human activity at the site. Glossotherium's armor plates offered a durable resource for toolmaking or ornamentation. The osteoderm assemblage at Santa Elina stands out for both its scale and its integrity, providing a unique opportunity to examine how humans may have interacted with extinct megafauna during the last glacial maximum. The faunal layer is not just a record of animal presence, it becomes the foundation for testing claims of early human behavior in central Brazil. 3 Glossotherium phoenicis osteoderms, each no larger than a coin, anchor the Santa Elina assemblage. Their geometry is distinctive, flattened, nearly heart-shaped plates with a single, centrally drilled perforation. The holes measure between 6 and 8 millimeters in diameter, forming a clean, circular aperture that passes entirely through the bone. The margins of each opening are sharp and regular, showing no signs of irregular weathering. On the surface, fine linear grooves radiate outward from the hole, consistent with repeated friction from a suspended cord or thong. The pendant's edges display a pattern of tabular retouch, with shallow flake scars and edge smoothing visible along one side. This retouching resembles the finishing seen on contemporaneous stone tools. Each pendant's outer surface is polished to a low sheen, while the interior of the perforation preserves a matte texture, suggesting deliberate shaping followed by suspension. Spatially, the pendants were recovered within a 5-centimeter vertical band in Unit TWE 4, tightly clustered alongside a modified glossotherium tooth and a scatter of retouched limestone flakes. The proximity of these artifacts points to a single episode of activity. No natural processes, such as water flow or animal disturbance, explain their association. The lithic pieces in this layer include 27 retouched tabular fragments, microblade cores, and percussion flakes, all manufactured from local limestone and flint. Their distribution mirrors that of the pendants, with most tools found within a meter of the osteoderm cluster. At the macroscopic level, these artifacts present unmistakable evidence of intentional shaping. The combination of heart-like geometry, uniform perforations, and spatial association with lithics and faunal remains sets the stage for further microscopic and instrumental analysis. High-resolution imaging provided the first layer of scrutiny for the Santa Elina pendants. Optical microscopy revealed directional microstriations running parallel to the long axis of each osteoderm, with rotational polishing marks and negative edge wear. These patterns align with experimental replicas of bone ornaments and differ fundamentally from random weathering or trampling. Scanning electron microscopy, operating at up to 5,000 times magnification, identified microchipping and cortical flake scars terminating precisely at the drilled aperture. Energy dispersive X-ray spectroscopy mapped a localized rim of calcium phosphate enrichment at the hole's edge, an indicator of friction from stone tool contact, not sedimentary abrasion. Ultraviolet visible photoluminescence detected a distinct fluorescence peak at 430 nanometers within the perforation channel. This signal matches protein residues, likely from a binding or polishing agent, and is absent in control samples exposed only to natural weathering. The presence of this organic signature points to deliberate human intervention during the finishing process. 3-dimensional reconstructions from synchrotron-based microtomography performed by the European Synchrotron Radiation Facility team, revealed the internal geometry of the drilled holes. Each aperture forms a smooth-walled cylindrical core with a uniform diameter of 6 to 8 millimeters. Subtle internal stress. Straw fractures radiate from the channel, a pattern that results from mechanical drilling rather than erosional pitting. No natural process is known to produce this combination of features in fossil bone. Together, these 4 analytical techniques, optical microscopy, scanning electron microscopy with energy dispersive X-ray spectroscopy, ultraviolet visible photoluminescence, and synchrotron tomography, provide independent complementary diagnostics. Each method rules out natural taphonomic scenarios and confirms the anthropogenic origin of the Santa Elina pendants. The analytical sequence leaves minimal room for alternative explanations. 12 radiocarbon measurements from charcoal, 6 uranium-thorium dates from overlying speleothem crusts, and 3 optically stimulated luminescence, OSL, results from sand lenses were combined within a hierarchical Bayesian model to establish the age of the Santa Elina occupation. Each method targets a distinct component of the archaeological layer. Radiocarbon constrains organic remains, uranium-thorium anchors the timing of carbonate precipitation, and OSL captures the last exposure of sediment grains to sunlight. The Bayesian approach integrates these independent datasets, accounting for stratigraphic order and laboratory uncertainties, to produce a single posterior distribution for the key occupation horizon. The resulting 95% credible interval places the deposition of the pendants and associated artifacts between 27,400 and 25,100 calibrated years before present. This interval is not a midpoint estimate, but a statistically robust range, reflecting the convergence of all 3 dating techniques. The model's convergence diagnostics show minimal conflict between input datasets, with posterior intervals for each method overlapping within a few hundred years. This tight clustering excludes the possibility of significant post-depositional mixing or intrusive artifacts from later periods. The full methodological details, calibration data, and raw measurement files are published in the July 12, 2023 issue of Proceedings of the Royal Society B. The open access repository includes all code and datasets used in the Bayesian modeling, enabling independent verification and reanalysis. The final age range anchors the Santa Elina assemblage firmly within the last glacial maximum, preceding the traditionally accepted Clovis horizon by over 12,000 years. No other inland American site with modified artifacts has yet produced a comparably secure and multi-proxy dated context. At the peak of the last glacial maximum, between 27,400 and 25,100 years ago, the Americas presented formidable barriers to human movement. Glacial ice sheets blanketed much of northern North America, with the Laurentide and Cordilleran masses merging to block inland passage between Alaska and the Great Plains. Sea levels dropped by over 100 meters, exposing vast coastal shelves, but also reshaping river systems across the continent. In central Brazil, the landscape differed sharply from the frozen north. The Mato Grosso plateau, where Santa Elina sits at 15 degrees, 27 minutes 28 seconds south, remained ice-free, covered by open woodlands and gallery forests. Major river corridors, the Upper Paraguay, Parana, and Amazon basins, linked the region to both the Atlantic coast and the southern cone, creating potential migration routes distinct from the glaciated north. Paleoclimate data show that rainfall patterns fluctuated but did not eliminate perennial water sources. The presence of large-bodied megafauna, including Glossotherium phoenicis, indicates that the environment supported stable ecosystems capable of sustaining human groups. These inland refugia stood in stark contrast to the impassable ice barriers further north, making central Brazil not an isolated outpost, but a plausible node in a broader network of migration and occupation during the last glacial maximum. 4 main objections have shaped the debate over Santa Elina's early dates. First, critics propose that the perforations in the Glossotherium osteoderms could result from natural weathering, not human activity. Optical and electron microscopy at Santa Elina revealed directional striations, microchipping, and localized enrichment of calcium phosphate at the hole margins, features inconsistent with abiotic processes. Second, some argue that the bone and stone artifacts might be mixed from different time periods. Bayesian modeling, integrating 12 radiocarbon dates, 6 uranium-thorium dates, and 3 OSL dates, constrains the assemblage to a narrow interval from 27,400 to 25,100 years ago, with all artifacts and faunal remains co-occurring in a single undisturbed stratigraphic layer. This tight dating supports a contemporaneous assemblage. Third, the legacy of the Pedro Ferrada controversy has led to skepticism about overinterpretation, but Santa Elina's protocols were pre-registered and analyses were replicated in independent labs in Brazil and France, minimizing interpretive bias. These pre-registered methods strengthen the case. Fourth, the criticism about lack of independent replication is addressed by public deposition of raw data and by a second laboratory confirming key photoluminescence results. Replication and transparency reduce the likelihood of error. In the broader context, Monteverde in Chile is widely accepted at 14,800 years. Toca da Tirapeia in Brazil exceeds 20,000 years by OSL. Chiquihuite Cave in Mexico claims 25,000 to 30,000 years, but that claim remains contested. A 2021 genomic model places initial entry at 26,000 to 25,000 years ago. Among these sites, Santa Elina stands out for combining stratigraphic integrity, clear artifact modification, and multi-method dating, providing the strongest direct evidence for humans in the Americas before 25,000 years ago. In early 2024, a follow-up study published in the Journal of Quaternary Science provided independent confirmation of the Santa Elina findings. Researchers from the same French-Brazilian team analyzed additional Glossotherium phoenesis bone samples from Unit TWE4, targeting collagen for accelerator mass spectrometry, radiocarbon dating, and stable isotope analysis. 5 sloth bones yielded calibrated ages between 24,150 and 25,370 years before present, overlapping the previously established range for the modified osteoderms and associated artifacts. Isotopic signatures with delta 13C values from minus 26.6 to minus 28.2 per mil confirmed a diet based on C3 woodland plants, consistent with local paleoenvironments and excluding the possibility of allochthonous or redeposited remains. All raw measurement data, including accelerator mass spectrometry output and stable isotope ratios, were deposited in the Dryad Open Access Repository, enabling full reanalysis by external researchers. The 2024 study did not address the modified tooth directly, but it replicated the chronology and ecological context using new specimens and laboratory protocols. This approach meets the highest standards of transparency and reproducibility, setting a precedent for open data in early American archaeology. As a result, the evidence base for human presence in central Brazil during the last glacial maximum is no longer reliant on a single excavation or analytical team. The field now faces a broader challenge: to apply these replication standards to other candidate sites and expand the search for early occupation horizons across South America. Today, evidence from Santa Elina, dated from 25,100 to 27,400 years ago and published in peer-reviewed journals, stands alongside White Sands, Monteverde, and Toca da Tirapeia, forcing a fundamental recalibration of American prehistory. As new sites emerge and genetic models evolve, the question shifts from whether early arrivals occurred to how migration routes and timelines shaped continental settlement. The timeline of human presence in the Americas is still being rewritten,